Grandma, that picture follows me. Since I have memory, the picture has been there. In my grandmother's house, hung in the room just on the fireplace. It is an oil portrait of an old man with a severe expression and dark eyes that seem to sink into the shadow. His face is inexpressive, but there is something in his gaze that has never left me alone. When I was a child, I avoided being alone in the room. I always felt that I watched me, regardless of where I would sit. Once I mentioned my grandmother that the picture was afraid, but she just laughed and told me that it was a family relic, a portrait of some distant ancestor. "You get used to time," he assured me. I never got used to it. Over the years, I stopped visiting my grandmother so often, but every time I did, the picture was still there. The only thing that changed was my sense of discomfort. Sometimes, when I passed through the room, I had the impression that the old man's eyes were at an angle different from the last time I saw them, or that his expression, although subtly, seemed to have become more serious. More live. One night when I was 17, I stayed to sleep at my grandmother's house. She insisted that she slept in the guest room, right next to the room. I tried not to think about it, but the idea of that picture hung in the other room bristled my skin. In the middle of the night, a noise woke me up. It was a crunch, as if someone had stepped on the wooden floor in the room. I stayed still, containing my breathing. Maybe my grandmother had risen by water, but then I heard something else. A whisper, just a murmur, but I was there. With my heart beating in my throat, I got up and gave the door. The room was dark, barely illuminated by the moonlight that entered the window. My gaze immediately went to the painting, and then I saw him. The old man looked at me directly, but it was not the same usual look. His eyes were no longer static on the canvas, but seemed deeper, more real. And the worst, his mouth, which had always been tight in a straight line, was now slightly ajar. I was paralyzed. Then the crunch sounded again, but this time it wasn't on the ground, it was inside the painting. I backed up a step and my breathing became erratic. He could not look away from the old man's eyes. In an instant, the dim light of the moon illuminated his face, and I saw something that froze my blood. His expression had changed completely. He was no longer a serious and distant old man. Now he had a grimace of satisfaction, as if I had been waiting for me. I felt a chill to go whole and turn around to run back to the room, but at that precise moment, I heard my voice. Not a whisper this time, but a hoarse and deep voice, which did not come from the house, but from the painting itself. "Don't run, you're here." Fear dominated me. I entered the room and closed the door. I got under the sheets, trying to convince myself that everything was my imagination, a dream, a misunderstanding. But then I felt something worse. The room was in complete darkness, but I would swear that there was a shadow darker than the rest in the corner. And that somehow, the old man's eyes were now there, staring at me. The next morning, my grandmother found me in the room, awake, trembling. He didn't ask me anything. He only gave me a cup of tea and told me in a strangely quiet voice, "I told you you would get used to it." I never returned to that house.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more videos like this.